BC. I am also co-lead of the BC Support Unit Northern Regional Center here, and my co-lead, Marcelo Bravo from Northern Health, is joining us today as well. And we are very happy to be facilitating this presentation from Victor and Waqar. I just want to take a second to acknowledge that that I gratefully live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Lheidli T'enneh. And if anybody today is joining us from a different traditional territory, please feel free to put your acknowledgements in the chat. We've organized this webinar so that it's a good introduction to REDCap, but then we have lots of room for Q&A. So please feel free to use the chat, the Q&A, or raise your hand, and we'll be monitoring that. After this session as well, we have a very short evaluation. We'd love it if people could fill in. We'll put the link in the chat, and we'll also send it out to registers. Victor has also agreed to share the slides. If anybody would like the slides afterwards, please let us know. And now it is my great pleasure to hand the presentation over to, first a short introduction from Waqar, and then Victor will be taking over. So I'm just going to share my screen.
Okay.
Waqar, would you like me to handle the introductory slides as well?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. There's only
Waqar is coming to us today from he's in transit right now, so he was worried he wouldn't be able to.
I would like to acknowledge that.
Okay,
I'm
no, just go ahead.
All right, can people hear me okay? Can people hear me all right?
So okay, I'll just briefly go over the slides. So this is brought to you by Health Research BC, the BC Support Unit. It's an introduction to REDCap by Waqar Mughal. He's the program director for data. About Michael Smith Health Research BC. The aim is to support health research talent whose research improves the health of British Columbians. They continue to have a long-term investment in building health research capacity throughout the province and further the use of research evidence in policy planning and practice. And this is how you can get more information on the support unit, Health Research BC in the support unit. There is Waqar's contact details. And now I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I'm going to pass it over to Victor.
Thank you very much, Liana. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. I want
Victor, we can't hear you. Just one
second. You cannot
second.
hear me? Okay. There is a problem. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Sorry, Victor. We're just going to problem solve this.
Yes.
Oh, you can hear Victor?
Yes. Maybe it's in your side. Can anyone else hear me?
All right. Apologies for that. Sorry, Victor. Please go ahead.
No worries. So now it's all okay? Well, thank you very much. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about this REDCap. It's a very powerful platform. I want to acknowledge that I am connecting from the Squamish and Chauncey First Nations in Victoria, where I work and live. And I appreciate to have the opportunity to contribute to these efforts across BC for supporting research and health services. Thank you very much. Yeah, you confirm that you can hear me. Okay, so the topic of today is a full introduction to REDCap, specifically for research and health learning systems. Really, I will touch other things, but in general, I think that will be the focus of the talk today. Let me click here. This is a plan for today. I will make a quick introduction to debate on what is REDCap, and then I will talk a little bit in some details on the eligibility to apply and request our services. And after that, I really would like to go a little bit more in depth and showing you a few of the main features in REDCap and how can be helpful. The idea is to give a good glance overview of REDCap that first of all motivate you, that resonates in your work. And if you feel or you see opportunities, we are more than happy to open these options and work together with you. I will present some of these features, as I said, but also I would like to go a little bit onto some examples, nothing specific, but some examples that will be a much better idea of what research can be done in REDCap. And at any time, as Liana said, please feel free to make any questions, any comments. We will leave some time at the end for Q&A, but the idea is to have a conversation more than a presentation. Of course, I am the one that has to present because it's REDCap, but I'm open to any conversation and discussion. So let's start then with the introduction. First of all, we are offering these services through Michael Smith Health Research BC and the BC Support Unit with several organizations that are working together to provide this service from our technical power, our experience providing these kind of services, our time, etc. These are the organizations. In particular, I work at Island Health here in Victoria. So I will mention more about that. But let's say now that REDCap that is getting more and more known stands for Research Electronic Data Capture. Is a web-based data collection platform that will help to manage databases, surveys, and of course, research projects. It is very secure. I will mention more on that, but it's well protected. It's a very stable and standard tool for research studies outside of pharmacy companies. And it is very good to manage the whole life process of your projects and keep the storage in a safe position. These are the big numbers for REDCap. Really, I updated them for this time from last year. And really, every time the numbers go up, you see, first of all, more than 6,000 organizations, more than 6,000 universities, health service institutions or hospitals, you name them. Let's say this health research is one, us providing services at Island Health is another one. So there are this many, and in 154 countries is a lot. And not wonder about the production, almost 2 million projects, almost 3 million users all around the world, and more than 30,000 citations in different medical journals. This is the link to the basic web page or website for REDCap that is hosted at the University of Vanderbilt in the United States. Okay, and then why is the success? Why to use REDCap? First of all, it's very accessible. I just had a couple of days ago one person that was about to start using REDCap with us, and the first question they asked was, "What do I need to install in my computer?" And really, it's nothing. It's web-based. That means that all goes back and forth through the browser, and there is no need for any maintenance upgrades in every computer, only on us, on our servers. It's very collaborative. It allows, with a lot of work with different size. I will talk more about that. With this multi-size access, and it nicely separates us if it's needed. It's highly customizable. We have used it in many different settings for different purposes, of course, for health services, but it's used for research, for data quality, for health service management, you name it. And because of the flexibility that is here, you can think about many possible solutions for very specific situations. It allows to keep maintaining your projects because you can make modifications at any time in a safe way. It's very accurate because it is provided in a very proven and tried environment. In particular, our instance at Health Research VC is something important for clinical trials or regulated studies, is that we have a validated instance. I also have a background in statistics, and REDCap is very helpful because it can export data into different packages. You see the list of there. That is very convenient. Not only is very easy to export data into these packages, but also exports metadata, which saves the statistician a lot of work because it brings the questions, the answers, but also options, labels, these kind of things. It's very secure. In our case, we use double-factor authentication, and of course, is login with a username and password, and is stored in Canada, in BC, with our IT security policies. And good news, this is free for anyone that qualifies, which is really wide and really open. I would think that all of you, or most of you, qualify for our support. I will put some more details. And if you have comments or questions on specific situations, we are more than happy to respond them to you. As I said, it is supported by BC Support Unit and the team that is behind there with our expertise and our time for doing that. It includes training, support, and tells many times on discussing your initial steps and see what is the best design for a study. For any project, it is very easy to do. In many cases, it's not a difficult thing, but planning is always recommended. In most of our cases, 1 hour and a half, 1 hour is more than enough to set up and start working with REDCap and start designing your projects. In days, a week, you are ready to set up and start collecting real data. And we support around this process. Certainly, if the research study, and I will go into some details, some examples, we may say, then there is need to be more careful design, but it is always, there are tools to do that. Also, we do troubleshooting and support on data storage. We upgrade regularly our version to have the most available features that are always adding up. And we have our documentation and we have backup. I don't know if there are some questions or comments. If not, I can continue, but I want to give a small stop. Okay, perfect. I will continue. Anytime, please, let me know. Okay. Who is eligible? How you can get started working with us is what I'm going to talk now. First of all, I would like to say that, let me see. Am I sharing my screen? Give me 1 second, please. Yes, I'm sharing my screen. No worries. Okay, I have a few things open, so you wanted to be sure that is visible. Okay, yes. Who is eligible is health researchers that work in BC and that are somehow associated with Health Research BC. And Health Research BC membership, let's say, is wide open. You can ask for more details, but really there is no problem in this case with this audience because the University of Northern BC qualifies, so it's not a problem. We are offering REDCap access for different type of projects, not all, but it's very wide. The first two is the patient-oriented research or general, even not POR, not POR research projects, but need research studies with ethics approval. That's the only thing we need. And we also can host quality improvement projects that are in support of health learning systems. Also operational projects if they are also related to that. So I would like to say that basically what we support or the projects that we support are either research, health research, or learning health systems and projects related to that. Then now, thank you for the support. It's free of charge. We don't charge any fee for the services. Okay. What do we offer in this service for free? Basically, is the creation of the project, given the description, and authorizing access for the investigators and providing guidance of how you can get that. Part of this I will discuss in a moment. Up to 4 hours of in-person and these times mostly remotely REDCap training, but it's very feasible because REDCap is actually a remote tool. And we secure the environment for your project, and we make the updates and the validations on the functionalities that when are available. So it's basically most of what you really need. Okay, let me see. There is a question. Is it possible? What is a free service now will become a fee for service in the future? That's a good question. Let me tell you, at least now, the opposite is what happened. If they were poor research studies, it was for free. If it was not poor, not patient-oriented research study, there was a charge. Now, everything is for free. So basically, that will be my answer. And I don't think it will be something that is reversible. If you set up a project or a study that we came up later with saying we will charge you. What is the future? Well, nobody knows, but that's the situation now. And I think it will stay at least for a good while in this situation. So if there is additional training or customizations that you will need that go beyond this, then we will need to discuss the facility, the resources that may be implied, and may involve some fees. There are some situations, but in many cases, the study team can deal with all the rest of the activities. Of course, if it goes very complex, you may need some support, but basically is by exception. There is a definition of what is patient-oriented research. It's basically studies that are started with a patient question or that is relevant to them. And there are some of the definitions. As Liana mentioned, this presentation is available to you. But because now there is no really distinction between patient-oriented or not patient-oriented research studies, there is no consequences on this. A learning health system is a new concept. Everybody's getting familiar with it. We landed in this definition, and when you request a study, a project to be hosted with us, we make these kind of questions, and depending on your answers, it is a learning health system or not. And maybe interesting for you, if it's a purely academic project, may not qualify, but some of you may be working with a health authority. I will suspect with Northern Health, that will be one of the logic partners with you. In this case, a learning health system, we say that the care providers or leaders in a health system are leading the project or are key members. That the changes or modifications that are coming from the project are evident and then occurs within the health system. And finally, that you can presume or you can explicitly identify that there are cycles on repeating what you get the information. But this is something that needs to be, what can be considered is kind of under considerations, I would say. How do you request a project? I will skip a little bit quickly on this, but basically, there is the links for all the information. You can go to our website. I may click in here, and you can go there. Let me see if I could. Yes, and there is a form, of course, a REDCap form or survey, where it asks you for some information. And with that, you complete the information and you request a project. If that's the situation, you can get access to this way. There is also the need to create a POP data account. That the steps to do that are here. And then we create a project here and we'll inform you and give you access. And we can give you access to as many people as needed in your team that has to work with REDCap. That doesn't include if it's a part of your study to set up surveys. The participants, they don't need a REDCap account. Okay, so let's go into what is REDCap in more detail. What are the functions that are there? We start with designing a project. A project in REDCap is, you can see that as this process is a life cycle on a project. You start in the development phase. It goes into production that could last months or weeks or years. And then you close the data collection part and go into analysis. Development is to create the project, to create your instruments, and fully test it. There are other things here that are setting access to users, define roles, provide the appropriate access to each of your participants, for example. You can also work on producing reports to anticipate what kind of information you are interested to get. All this goes into development. Okay, later on, when you are ready, the REDCap project for your study can be moved into production. And then you start collecting real data. In the testing, you collect data, but it can be easily deleted and move into real information. And you can make changes still there. This is completely possible and sometimes is inevitable. The less, the better, but it is very flexible and allows to do these changes offline and is tested before making the live to protect your data. And then you collect a lot of data. You can do a lot of management on adding, recruiting subjects, on adding members of your team, reviewing the progress of your data, evaluating some quality checks. I will talk about that, all this. So this is a busy part, the production phase. Finally, when you get all the information that you are aiming, you can export the data. You can build reports. They should be built in terms of designing before, but you can start using them and you can extract them, and you will apply again data quality at the end. This, for example, in learning health systems, this is a cycle. It can go this way. You analyze the information, you identify some changes, go back to production, and go back to analysis as much as needed. Okay, so there is a landing page in REDCap. In the left-hand side menu, there is a menu that has a lot of functionality. I will not go into that today. This is not training, but there is a lot of activities or functions that you can do. But this part, which is the project setup, is like a checklist that you follow in order to design and set up your project. It takes, it's just a checklist just to show that you have followed the process and are ready at the end with all this, from designing to testing, and then you are ready. There is a lot of functionality, a lot of help embedded in REDCap, and I also am including at the end of the presentation some links for further information and for the documentation. Okay, the basic package allows how many questions? There is one question, any number of questions. There are projects that have thousands of questions and thousands of users. There is no real limit, and especially in our environment, where you are not working with worldwide cases, there is no much big data. And certainly, if there is a situation that you are planning to work with big data, then we have to talk about that, just not because of REDCap, but because of the capacity in the servers. But there is really no limit on that. And I would say that typically a project has from 20 to a couple of hundred questions. And I will talk about forms or instruments. You can have from one form, which could be a survey, to several forms, but let's say 5 to 10. I can see more. I have seen more, but it's not the usual. And that's basically the situation. If you have further questions, I can answer that. In this line, there is a first separation on classic projects that try to be as simple as possible. You can create several instruments. Each line of here is just a screenshot. It is a different instrument. They are separated to make it not a long instrument. It's not convenient to have a long instrument that they can be captured at different moments, and or the topics are different. So this is part of the considerations to break them into different instruments. Apart from that, you can have a longitudinal study when there is, if you can have a time line in here, but this is basically linear. Is one instrument, then apply the second, the third, etc., etc. But here, if you need, you can have a longitudinal study with several more complications on that, more complex, not complications, complex situations. Then you set up your instruments and create a matrix by different columns for different, what is called in REDCap events. This schematic one, I will show you something more, is an initial data or baseline, and then you can collect data, let's say every week for 4 times, and then collect final data. And in this case, for example, you have one questionnaire, the standard PMQ, and you can apply it 4 times, for example. It's many settings, but this could be one situation. So this is REDCap has the flexibility to accommodate these kind of things very easy. Let me go to the next one. You would like to design your instruments. is creating your own questions. You can import or you can get easily instruments that are already designed somewhere else. There is a library for REDCap, let's say Central World Library, what is the REDCap Shared Library, with thousands of standard instruments, GATS7, etc. You name it. There are thousands. You can search for them. But in general, you would like or you will need to create your own instruments. And for that, there is this page that you can add instruments, you can design them, and when you click in the name, you will be able to add your own questions. And it looks like this. For each question, there is a little box with the basic information and the type of questions. When you click in the pencil, you edit the question or you create the question if it's the first time, and you open another box for that question where you specify the type of question, what is read, an internal name that has some simple rules to add them, and some additional customizations. And you do that question by question. This is the online designer. For more complex or seasoned users, you can use Data Dictionary. It's basically the same information in an Excel format that is very strict, but if you do that, it's easy to set up many questions, for example. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. I can go back or whatever. One of the important elements, especially in surveys, when you need to distribute a survey or a series of surveys among your participants, is branching logic. I always said that the worst enemy for a survey is the rate of response. You have to work very carefully all the time to set your study in a way that your rate of response is as high as possible. You can invite people, you have to be very clear, you have to motivate them. If there is some relationship, it's better if you contact them through a clinic or something. Anything of this is important. I will talk more about consent and all these kind of things, but a very basic and important element in REDCap is branching logic, which only means that you can hide or show questions only when they are needed. And you can do that. For example, if the participant is a female or a mother, then you can ask if they have children from 0 to something, if they have born. But if not, you don't have to ask this question. So that is achieved by branching logic. Is a little button that you activate, and you can activate that by selecting the condition, just drag and drop, or setting your condition, especially if it's more complex. But this is very convenient, very easy, and it reduces the size of the survey, for example. Let's go now into other parts, data entry, reports, data quality, login, user rights. You see these examples, and I will go then to other ones online. When you have ready your document, and it's data entry, that means that this is part of your team. It could be, for example, that you collect the data when the users or the participants, I would say, go to the clinic. And at that moment, the study coordinator approach them and start making some questions so they can answer on their behalf. That's one way to collect data in REDCap. And you can do both. You can send a survey if they are allowed to, and this is proper. Then they receive a link, and they don't need, as I said before, a REDCap account. Is just with the link in the email invitation, and here is where what I mentioned. It's very convenient that this email invitation is very clear from whom comes, what is the purpose, and all this. Even if it's anonymous, it's important to state what is the situation. And then they will face a survey, as most of us are exposed to surveys with all the questions, and you can customize them to make this as easy as possible for them. So you can set up an instrument as simple data entry, which is the default case, or you can set it up as a survey. Moving on time, let's say that we have collected data. We would like to see some reports. Certainly, I advise that as the sooner the better you design your reports, because then you will know what is the information that you want to have. REDCap allows to build custom reports very easily. You don't need to know any coding, any programming to do that. It's just by clicking buttons and selecting fields that you want to include, conditions, whatever, just with clicking buttons. And then you will get a list of all the records or cases that fulfill your design in the report, what columns or fields you included, maybe if there is some conditions. For example, here, it could be that the answer is yes or no, something like that, or a limit or range of dates, whatever, something on that, you can select that in order to get a list of data. With that, you can export that to Excel, but very important, to statistical packages. And as I said, you export this data in a CSV file, but also additional, you get in another file all the definitions to have this up and running. In particular, I use SPSS, and it's very helpful, and it saves me hours of work. In all the process, something that is very important is that the information that you collect is the highest quality as possible. And REDCap in the designing, I didn't mention, but it's very convenient to set up the questions as close as possible. It's better to set up a question on a radio button or a drop-down list or checkboxes where you anticipate what are the responses. You can even put that and add the option other if you are missing something. But in some cases, or as complement, you can enter some text. But it's very convenient to have that as much as possible. If you know the ranges that are allowable, it's better, because that will protect you for some typos or things like that. The more you can protect the quality of your data, the better. Additional to that, there is this data quality checks. It's a list of different aspects of REDCap that can immediately check to tell you if there are some conditions that are failing. For example, missing values, or missing values when the field is required, which is key, or many other things. One of my favorites is the last one that appears here, that is incorrect calculations. Because of some changes, or because of data entry entered later, things like that, you can check if some calculations are incorrect, and you can view them and fix them if needed. So REDCap is very nice on that. In other cases, I will not go more into that, but if you import data from other source, there is the possibility in REDCap to import data, and at that moment, REDCap also checks that the data that you are importing is fulfilling your conditions. So it is a very good tool to protect your data and to provide a good level of quality. Another one of my favorites is the log, is audit trails. These audit trails really is a list of different options that tells you when someone who did something, what type of action did, and some details. And you can select for type of event, you can select your user, you can select records, and all these kind of things. You can set a range of dates for all this. Is very powerful and very useful. So is not policing, but is when there is something wrong or when you want to follow something, is here. We use it for a variety of reasons, and it's very useful to assure that your project is running correctly and as expected. One important element is that you can request access for any number of your team that participate that, and you can assign rights. You can assign rights on different topics to provide what each of the members of your team can do. And it also is important that that you can define roles, because you can have, for example, several members of your team that will be data entry. Some of them will be designer or report creators or things like that. And you will have your statistician. Certainly, you will have the PI that can see everything but touch nothing. And you will have, of course, the project manager. And if, for example, you have a multi-site study, you can design this together with something that is called data access groups and provide access to different groups of data, not all the data, but only the ones for their site. So it's very powerful and very convenient to set up all these properly. Other functionalities in REDCap include this list. I will go into a few of them that are more related to research, but the list is very wide, and I can talk more about anything else that is here. But I would like to make another stop to see if there are other questions or comments. And then I will jump into some few examples. Okay. Can this crossover from other health authorities? That's the question. Yes, it's a good question. And really, I work for Island Health, and I'm in touch with other teams, Interior Health, PHSA, and recently, and very successfully, but very recent, Northern Health. Each of us has our own REDCap instance. But this health research PC that we also support is, for me, something more promising in terms of setting up some studies that could be across the whole province with no problem, because it's stored here. We follow our security and privacy policies. And yes, you can set up your groups, what is called data access groups or sites by health authority if you want to do that. And I have participated in some projects or some studies where there are some rare diseases, and it's very difficult for any hospital or any institution to collect enough data. So you set up a multi-site study with different participants. And if you are a part of this, is more than welcome. You can set up these sites. So there are several things. If you create these sites, for example, or data access groups, as is called in REDCap, then you can assign, let's say, a site coordinator that will have a lot of rights, but only for their own records. A person in Northern Health will have a lot of control and autonomy to work with their data, but they cannot touch anything from Interior Health or Island Health or other organizations. But there will be the project or the study coordinator that can oversee everything. So yes, it can be done in that way. I was saying, one of my visions on this is that these kind of wide studies will be more frequent, and is the natural place to do that is here, because all the institutions can concur there and store the information. I don't see any problem with ethics boards accepting to store this information here. Even it's possible and has happened that it could be studies across Canada, so you can recruit people somewhere else. It is possible by all means. I have another couple of questions. For students using REDCap for data collection, how long could be collected data be kept or deleted? It's a good question. First of all, it has to fulfill the conditions that I stated before. If you are a student at UMBC and you are running or want to run a research study, even as part of your studies or your career, you are welcome to do that as long as you are affiliated with that. And then we don't make any separation. And currently, we store the information with no limits. The opposite is what's happened. Sometimes ethics boards state that all information has to be removed after a few years or some years. We do that by request. If the PI requests that the information has to be removed, we close and we delete the information from our instance. Of course, it takes time because of the backups and all these things, but eventually the information is separated, but there is no distinction on that. Another question, can you go over how to export data? I have been involved at arm's length in a project. A colleague had set up the forms, but gave me access, and I haven't been able to access the data from completed surveys. Sure, I can do that. First of all, you will need to have a rights to export the data, but I will show you very quickly on how to do that right now. You have another question, the same thing. I think you may have just answered my questions. If the survey was set up by Interior Health, but I from Northern Health have access, can I export data? Or those Interior Health needs to export the data and share it with me? Okay, yes, that's what I was saying. There are different situations of what you can do or what you cannot do. If, let's say, this is separated, as I understand, from different health authorities, if you don't have rights to see the information from other health authority, Interior Health, then you will not be able to export it. And yes, one possibility is that, and you have to be careful how to share safely this information, but it's possible. Another possibility is to give you access to export the data, and it can be done. You can have rights to see information from other sites without touching it. Let me go very quickly into REDCap to show you that. Both things, because it's both in this one. I will go, I have several examples. I can go as many as you want, but we have a very simple one. REDCap in here. Give me 1 second because I need to set up. Oh, I have a few things open. Second. So this, I'm involved with several instances. That's why it's a little bit complicated for me. You see here, we have set up the double factor authentication. I select my usual one, which is to get an email with the code. Let me see. Okay. Accepted. So this is authentication. This is just a testing case. I will start with this. Let me see if I will click the dashboard to see if I have instrument. No, I don't have any, but that's okay. I could enter one. Let me show you very quickly, maybe with the how to enter some data. You can share this link but in this case, I will open it. Oh, the survey is inactive. Oh, okay. I select another one. To extract the data, you can go to this data export stats, and then you can extract. There are 2 default options, and then you can create a new report, but you can do that. And here is the button. This is to extract all the data. You export this, and then you select which is your the platform that you want to export it. Let's say I select this. You can add some features to prevent filtering some critical or sensitive information. And then these other elements, that is formatting, and clicking this export data. It will not work, but I don't need to, but that's what you need to do. If you don't get to this page, it's because you don't have rights. So that's what is needed, okay? Okay, I think that's what we have. Let me go back to my examples. At least I want to go with one of them, just to give you a flavor of possible complexity. Yes. I'm not going to show any specific data, but this is a real project. Here, this is what is called the dashboard. It says all the cases that there are. In this case, they have collected to 793 records of participants. They are identified, they are anonymous, so they are coded this way. And first of all, you see, this is each of these are different instruments that are used for the first event. And then there is a 6 weeks follow-up, and there is more. I need to scroll down here. And then there is the 4 months follow-up, 6 months follow-up, 12, 24, and then any other not planned on schedule follow-up. If I click any one, I will not go into the details. It doesn't make sense. But you see that this information is in the screen. These are all the instruments that have been collected. There is a lock here, which means that you can you can set this up very nicely to protect your data even further. There could be someone that has the role for data entry, but once they finish, the coordinator can go back, check that all information is correct, and lock it. So the data entry most likely will not have the rights to lock the data, but the coordinator does. And with this, nobody can go back and change the data. And there are many other situations to protect your data, but it is kind of the thing that is here. Let me show you a little more things here. I will go to the project setup. And in this, let me show you the events here. There is a warning that we shouldn't change them because it can lose the data. It doesn't allow, not many people can do this, but here is where you set up the events. When are they off to check from the initial event? And you can, with that, create your matrix and stating of all your instruments, which here are several ones, when you will apply them. And it's all this. Let's say, for example, the visit assessment is done every visit, of course. The patient eligibility and the randomization is only done at the beginning, no more. So all these kind of things, you can do that. To do that, I will not do the change, but just by clicking begin editing, you can click any of these boxes and add them to this. I will not do that. I just will move out. Because this is randomized, I just want to go to the randomization to show you a little bit more. Let me see. I think this is closed. At least I don't see it. It should be here in this list. So that's okay. I will show you another example for that. Okay. So let me just go to somewhere else because I don't want to make any changes. By leaving there, I didn't touch. This is what I mentioned of the checklist. This is the main settings. Here is you spend a lot of time designing your instruments. Then the events, as I show you, additional settings. You can set bookmarks for references if you want to. This is the user rights. Then you have to test a lot your project. And when you feel ready, you move the project to production. So you go all these steps. Okay. Okay, a question. If there is a way to find out how many UNVC researchers are using REDCap, we have our controls and we have our requests. I will need to go there, but I don't want to expose any data. I can provide it later on to you, Niela. Okay. Let me see. I think there is another question. Okay. Can you over how the data is stored? Can you further explain the data privacy and security policy? Okay, first of all, the data storage is transparent to users. In our documentation, we set up that the servers are stored in BC. They are stored in the facilities for POP data. So that's what it is. The only thing you can see is that this website is a domain in Canada. Other than that, you cannot see that unless you have access to the backend, which even me, I don't go there very often, but it is there. So you will have to believe me. The other part is data privacy and security policy. Well, we are regulated by FIPA, and in our website, the one that I presented to you at the very beginning, there are links to all of this information. Let me see if I can see that. No, it's not here. I think I closed it. Okay. So yes, I don't know what exactly is that, but we follow. It's a full set of conditions. For example, in data privacy and security, I mentioned a few things. There is the double factor authentication, the login with username and password. Is all the communications is encrypted. We use encryption for all the communications. We have, of course, the support from IT in POP data for all the security layers, including antivirus, firewall, and all these things. We apply patches, and that's what happened just recently because of your question of what happened yesterday, is because we needed to apply emergency patches to security threats. So we apply all this. Our policy starts with the request. It's a formal request. You request the project with us. With that, we review it, and if it qualifies, we send you a letter of collaboration, and it states all the conditions that you have to fulfill in terms of our policies, which includes, for example, the question I was mentioned before for Gloria, is that you are responsible for the data that you collect and the way you manage it, including, very importantly, the extraction. So you have to be careful with that, where to extract the data, if it's a safe place, that is protected, that is not exposed, how you transmit it, whom do you share, is all this part of the policies. One more question. Is REDCap storage fully supported by research ethics boards? I don't think it's well, it's not fully supported, it's approved. It's not supported. Research ethics boards, they review applications on storing or running studies. And certainly one of the important lines is data. And yes, what I would say is that ethics board, at least our ethics board here in Island Health, but other ones, UBC and many others, are very familiar with REDCap. And I would say that, generally speaking, they are happy with that. They know all the how REDCap works and all the security levels and privacy settings, how we run them, and they have approved that. I think it's a good element that has added a lot of security, a lot of confidence of how REDCap, not let's say academic initiated, has been working. Before, it was very vulnerable. In many cases, solutions like Excel sheets or access that other situations that are not protected or as protected as REDCap. Yeah, in that regards, the research ethics boards, I think they see with good eyes running research studies in REDCap. And the 6,000 institutions are facing the same situation. They host ethics approved projects or studies. Okay, any other question? I think I was to show you another example. Let me see if I got it here. Let me go into that. Yes, it expired. Okay, this is another study. You can see similar situation is a baseline observation, then the process of enrollment, then different visits. You see quite a bit. I went too fast. Okay, so the point here that I want to mention is what I didn't find in the other one, is randomization, because it has to be enabled. So here you have the randomization, and basically this has already been set up for this example. You go step by step on how to define your randomization. First of all, you decide if it's going to be a stratified randomization. If you will randomize by sites, that's another type of common stratification. What is the field that you will use to randomize? Basically, many times you select one, which is going to be click randomize now. And then I will not touch this, but it's there. Once you have that, you have some examples, because what you do is you create outside REDCap allocation table with as many or more than needed cases that will be stored in a very simple but very convenient format for storing the data in REDCap. And every time a case is randomized, you will go and use that. Then you upload this file here, and it's there. It's ready. This is ready. So that's what it is here. I don't want to go, of course, into expose any data, but let me see. I will open this because it's empty. And I will not do anything, of course. But there are some questions in this case for inclusion exclusion. When they fulfill the conditions, it will be randomized. Let me see. Okay, there is branching logic, the one that I mentioned. You have to enter all the options to fulfill the criteria. And when all the inclusions are fulfilled and no exclusions are fulfilled, then there is the button to say randomize. And then is when you just click the randomization, and that's all. It's all what you need. I will not go further because I don't want to touch or expose any information. Okay. Okay. Let me see if there are more questions. Yes. Let's see. It's all about survey, but I want to know if REDCap has features to enable the use of interview to collect data. Okay, let me see. Let me see if I understand these questions. It's all about survey, but I want to know if REDCap has features to enable the use of interview to collect data. Okay, yes, certainly you have, as I mentioned in the presentation, the possibility to send surveys. And that means that the participants, the subjects, will answer the questions directly. But it is possible, and even can be some cases, yes, that way surveys, some cases not, that you can have a set of the form, the instruments, and you will use the data entry that will be managed and used, let's say, in a laptop, for example, by the study coordinator, and they approach the subject while waiting for the visit with the doctor, and set up an interview and ask them if they can respond these questions about the study that they have accepted to, or previously consented to participate. And then it is the data entry where the coordinator can read aloud all the questions and ask them, do you do this, you do that, have you seen this, or whatever, and collecting all the data. And once it's done, they save the information and it's already in REDCap. I don't know if that the question was about this interview to collect data, but that's what I would think about. Okay. Any other questions, or I will show you one more last example. This is a project, but these are settings for a survey. This has been set up as a survey. And I'm going to open this. These settings are a lot of functionalities. I will not go over all them, but you can customize with your own logo. You can select a theme. I like, for example, this cappuccino or something with different colors. You can enhance the font. Let me see. No, the buttons. If you enhance them, they are larger, so they look like this. For some people, pediatric studies, frail people, things like that, is convenient. And a lot of things to customize your survey. But I want to scroll down to a section just to comment because of research motivation. There is a e-consent. You can enable the e-consent, which has several implications. That's why it's called a framework. But the situation is that you can have different settings. One of those is that you can have a separate project that is only the purpose if you want to, and it's possible, and if you are allowed to do that by the ethics board, you can have a survey that is identifiable, that they enter all the information, personal information, and they can enter, for example, the inclusion and exclusion criteria, but very importantly, and that's the purpose, to enter questions that if they consent to participate. And they can sign, or they can enter I consent, or they can click I consent, but this information is immediately auto-archived, and even set all the e-consent framework. With that, you have all the assurances electronically that the person has consented to participate. Once this is done, then you can assign a study ID and add this person to the real study that is completely separate. This mapping between the person, their particular names, and the study ID has to be separated, has to be stored separated, and then you run your anonymous de-identify study, research study. And that's one of the process. There are a lot of researches that you have to do, but this is part of the e-consent. So it's possible to do that and work securely and separate that to maintain the anonymity in your studies. I'm going to cancel. I don't want to do nothing here. Okay. Is there any other questions? Oh, yes, here. Is REDCap storage fully supported? Well, okay. I'm not very clear on the supported because the process is that the investigators present the request for approval for research ethics board. In directly speaking, we don't have a formal interaction with the research ethics boards, but they require information about where they want to store the information, and they mention and they say that the information will be stored in REDCap. What I want to state is that the ethics boards approve the storage or the processes or studies run in REDCap. So it's presented by the investigator and approved by the ethics board. But yes, in that regard, the REDCap fulfills the criteria because in many cases, what the ethics boards require for data storage is, of course, is that it's secure, safely protected, well-maintained, and very critically stored in Canada. And we fulfill that, all those conditions, and even more, we store the data in BC. So the answer, yes, the ethics boards approve the storage of data the way REDCap does. Okay, and then other questions related to the questions around, let me see, around qualitative data, and apologize if I missed this. I'm interested in this as data storage as well as data collection too. For example, there are mechanisms to import databases or research data created through other data collection mechanisms, and to use this tool to store as compared to collect data. Okay. That's a good question. I have heard this before. Really, REDCap is not a repository. I will think that it's not really a place to collect all your data. If you have standardized and you have access to your data, go for it. REDCap is really more related to collect data. Part of the data may be available somewhere else and you can import it. But just as to put all the data together is not the purpose. It will be, we will need to review the situation, what else you want to do, and what is the purpose of that. It's doable, certainly technically speaking, it's not a problem, but also it fits to what I said before, how much data are we talking about? But it would be, if interested and you have a use case, we can talk about this because from start, I don't see if it's something that we can help on that. As importing data from other places, there are different ways to do that. The direct way is to import data from CSV files. But if your data is too large, maybe you would like to build an API to connect your source and import data into REDCap. It is doable. This is something that is completely additional to the basic support that we provide. And we will assume that you have a programmer in your team that can do that. We give you access. It's very specific. We provide what is called a token, which is the way to connect with the REDCap database, and you will go into that. That's what I can tell you. When I read the first part of qualitative data, REDCap has the possibility to collect data in what is called notes text or notes fields, which is unlimited. You can enter as much data as you want. That is helpful for describing a situation, for entering some feedback from the patient that is not a plan or things like that. If there is no limit, you can do that, but that's the situation. Here at Daniel, we have a colleague that helps with data quality analysis. It's not my field, but it can be done that way. One more thing. Do you suggest to learn REDCap before other popular paid software? Okay. What might be some advantages or disadvantages? Well, to be honest, I'm not very familiar with other options, paid options. Here at Island Health, there is another software that has been paid the license. But if it's research, I will go for REDCap. Any other tool there are very, very expensive, but those are the ones that are used by pharma companies. If we are talking about surveys, there are others that are focused on surveys that could be easier to use, but I don't think they are will be approved, especially for research, because of where the data is collected and what is the protection. Yes. Yeah, I will say that I don't get any more pay for more users and more work, but I'm very happy to do that. But I really think that REDCap is a good way to go. One more thing that's helpful. Thank you. It is good to clarify. It is not preferred to be used as a repository, and that data import is beyond the basic support. Well, it's beyond, but yes, the import, as I said in the first way, to import data from a CSV is very easy to do. Well, it's very easy to do, but the data has to be clean. And yes, it's something that can be done with not much problem, but you have to do some work to be sure that it's doing properly. Let me show you very quickly what I mean. And yes, if it's much more complicated and you need to use an interface and API, then yes, you will have to consider that. Let me go somewhere. Actually, I can go here. Let me see. Okay, in the many options are here. One is the data import tool. You can import data into here. You can, first of all, you will need to import the template in Excel. I will show you it very quickly. The data has to be here. Let me share it with you. Here it is. Oops. Okay. Okay. So these are all the columns for, let me just, all the columns that are considered in the project. you can enter the information. The question is that all this data has to be coded accordingly to the definition of your project. And there is where some information, if it's not very of high quality, you will have to do a lot of work to import this data somehow here. I have many examples, many slides that I could show you, but it's some information that I don't want to expose. But the question is there. Imagine that you have 10 or 100 or 1,000 records, 1,000 lines of all these with all the information collected. Then you go back here to this page, and then you navigate to select your file. I'm not going to do it. Well, I can do something. Let me show. Okay, you can go. Let me go to downloads because I will select. I don't want to show you, but the data, let's say, for example, this is the data. Yes, I can select this. It's there, and you upload it. It will fail because it doesn't work for this, but that's what I meant, because REDCap immediately identify some problems, and here it tells you some things. And of course, it says the fields that you want to upload do not belong to this project, of course, because I just took it randomly. But it takes everything, and if they were there, it checks that the expected the answers are the one of the expected options, for example. So, but this can be done very quickly. If you have your data in these cases to import them, you can do that with no more problem, depending, of course, as I said, of the quality of the data. But if it's a more difficult situation or many pieces of data, then you will need a programmer. Otherwise, you can do it. Okay. Okay. Any other question? Leana, Marcelo, did I miss something?
I don't think so, Victor. That was incredibly comprehensive. Thank you so much. And if there's no further questions, I think that we can, oh, it's 4:23. We're almost at time anyway. I think we could.
Yes, we're almost to the time.
I think we could all just really thank you very much for presenting this for us. This was really interesting. If anybody else has any further questions, please feel free to reach out. We can connect you with Victor or Waqar, and just as a reminder, we'll send out afterwards. We'll send out the recording, the evaluation, very short evaluation form, and we can send out the PowerPoint presentation as well.
Again, thank you very much for the opportunity. It was my pleasure, and I hope this opens options for many other people and get interested. I'm more than happy to support you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.